Good evening, everybody. Thank you for connecting to this webinar. We're just waiting for 1 or 2 minutes for the ones that are a bit late for connections, and then we're going to start. Hello, everybody. Just wait for 1 more minute to give chance to everybody being connected. Okay, we can start. I think we have enough people to start. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you also to all speakers who accept to present their topic today based on the regulatory and market access in USA, dedicated to a medical device. So I'm sorry for that, but it was not very clear in the registration page. So it will be mainly dedicated to medical devices today. So we have 3 structures which gonna speak today, Patricia and Emeline on Medicen Center. Then we're gonna have Michel Berg from Axilom Robotics, and finally Sami Merad from Medrock Ventures. So here is agenda of the day. So I will first present you the next webinars of Enosis Santé, and then for the one who don't know Enosis, I will just give few words on it and explain you who we are. First topo will be between clearance FDA and CE mark by Patricia and Emeline. Then Michel from Axilom will give his feedback on the clearance FDA and commercialization through a distributor in US. And finally, Sami will give a topo on the commercialization in US for MedTech with some key points. And we are really sorry, but it just takes a subject 2 days and they replace one of his colleagues. And after each presentation, we will have a small question time. And then at the end, we have a longer question and answer time. So for the next webinars, we on 21st January, we're going to have a webinar dedicated to public US grants organized by our partners of Lyonbiopôle. And during the 2025, during the first semester, we're going to have a series of 3 webinars regarding the Japanese market. And in the second semester, it will be more on the discovery of other markets, which are not so common for us, meaning that Middle East, Australia, and India. So for Enosis Santé, we are a group of 4 French health-tech clusters. So BioValley France here, based in Grand Est region in Strasbourg. We have also Eurobiomed for the great south of France, between Nice and Toulouse. We have also Lyonbiopôle for Auvergne and Rhône-Alpes regions, and finally Medicen for all the Paris region. And all together, we have common topics and members, and we group our force with more than 1,400 members, with lots of innovative companies, more than 1,200. Lots of funds raised by these members in 2022 and 2023. We're gonna have consolidated results by next year. for 2024, and lots of R&D projects accompanied, and also where we bring our knowledge and we help them to obtain and improve the project. Our ambition is to be very close to the players. So thanks to our proximity and expertise, we want to assist all the companies, innovations, and all things that are related to French healthcare. So the idea is to federate the ecosystem from companies, academics, also all the universities, but also the hospitals, the clinicians, the doctors, and of course the patients, to really try to help to bring the innovations, health innovations, to the patients. So our mission is to give a voice to local innovations, and to help them to get funds, but also to get chance to bring the innovations directly to the users. So might be the patients, might be the doctors, if it's more digital also innovations. And for that, we coordinate all initiatives in France. So not only by cluster, so each of us in our region, but also all together to bring more power in our missions. So the first speak today will be by Patricia and Emeline from Medicen Centers, and I will let you the floor now, Patricia and Emeline.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Me too.
Sorry.
You hear me? It's okay?
Yes.
Yes, very good.
Okay, so sorry for that. So I am Patricia Griffiths. I am the director of Medicen Center, and I let my colleague present herself.
Okay, and I'm Ellen Dejury, and I'm the care manager at Medicen Center.
Okay, so yes, I can put the slides. Yes, fine. Okay, so Medicen Center, just a brief introduction. So we have a center of competencies and engineering dedicated to medical devices, and we support medtech industrials and academics from the idea up to the market to de-risk the innovative medical device project and speed up the time to market, thanks to competencies in thanks to competencies in design and development, and also in technical, regulatory, and quality affairs. So the topic today is about the FDA compared with CE mark. So we will briefly make a general information and then present the product classification and regulatory pathways in both regions. We will also talk about quality, and we make a conclusion. So regarding the two systems, in United States, so there is a FDA, which is one federal public agency. And for medical devices, this is a Center for Devices and Radiological Health, who take the part of evaluation of medical devices. So in this, there is 5 divisions, and they are by therapeutic areas. The responsibilities and the intervention of FDA is wall, and we will see the difference with UE. So their role is to regulate the MD safety and effectiveness. They are there for the pre-market review as well as the post-market surveillance. They will engage also enforcement actions with corrective action following to non-conformities. Their role is about classification and reclassification if needed. And they have also special programs. They take the responsibility of the quality system regulation, and they have an impact. They also are involved in facility inspections. Compared to that, in Europe, the system is with interconnected structures. There is first the European Union Council and European Union Parliament, which adopts regulations. And for today, what is important is medical device regulation, and also the Artificial Intelligence Act, which can be important for some of you. And then we have competent authorities. There is one competent authorities for each European Union member country, which depends on the Ministry of Health. Their role is to transpose the MDR to national legislations, but they also are involved in market surveillance, and their role is also to designate and monitor notified bodies. And then you have the notified bodies. Notified bodies, now we have we are more than 50 notified bodies for MDR, and their role is to assess MD conformity in pre-market and to ensure compliance with MDR requirements. So in order to compare both systems, in US, there is centralized and uniform systems, which have all the role for the evaluation, information, regulation, surveillance, and assistance of medtechs. And experts are defined by divisions. Remember that the divisions are by therapeutic areas. And also, which is important, it's about the review timelines, which are defined and are binding. Meaning that, for example, for 510K, there is 90 days. For PMA, there is 180 days of review. These timelines may stop and restart if additional information are required, or may reset when a submission is filled, but they are quite predictable, I will say. Compared to Europe, European Union sets the regulations, competent authorities implement it, and notified bodies operate. So this is a hierarchical and collaborative links between all of them. And some group of experts, CHMD, which are the competent authorities for medical device, and the MDCG, the medical device coordination group, which are a group of experts which aim to coordinate and harmonize. But it's quite new, and things are changing, and not everything is harmonized between the notified bodies up to date. So each notified body has or contractualized with experts. So not all the same experts for all of European medtechs. This is the thing which is quite different. And also manufacturer can choose a notified body as you choose a supplier. So, and what we know also, it's about certification timelines, which is quite unpredictable and are not binding. That is to say that when a notified body mentions a date, if it does not respect it, then there will be no action for that. The medtech will need to wait. So the second point we will go now is about product quality classification and regulatory pathways, which are also quite different. So in both regions, there is a classification. So in FDA, you have class 1, class 2, class 3, and medical devices. And for CE mark, you have class 1, class 2A, 2B, and 3. So I will briefly mention about these categories, meaning that for class 1 in both regions, they are for low-risk devices, and for US, they are subject to general controls. This is almost all class 1 medical devices are exempt of pre-market notification and full QSR. Some exceptions are there, especially, for example, for when there is a system which is automated with computer software, or other parts can happen. But this is quite a simple pathway. In Europe, the class 1 are also low risk, and devices are subject to self-certification, meaning that they do not require the intervention of a notified body for certification. The manufacturer will have in-house technical file, and it makes the declaration by itself. And the QMS is according to regulation and not required to be ISO 13485. For class 2, which is the main, oops, it doesn't, yeah, it's okay. Class 2, it's the most important class, I will say, in US, which are for moderate risk devices. They are subject to general controls and to special controls. And the primary pathway for class 2A is a pre-market notification 510K process, which needs to demonstrate substantial equivalence with a legally marketed predicate device. And this is really important to make the choice for the predicate device. This is really important to take time to have the good and the right predicate devices. Also, you need to demonstrate that the medical device is safe and effective, and clinical data is not systematically required for 510K. Also, in US, you have lots of guidance of standard which are recognized and which are mandatory. In case of there is no predicate devices, you can ask to a de novo request, which can be submitted. It can be submitted there is two options for that. Either this is after a non-substantial equivalence decided by the FDA, meaning that the predicate device used was not the right, and they consider that there is not a substantial equivalence, then you can ask for a de novo request. Or the other way is to start to not fulfill a 510K process and just directly go to de novo request. This is possible for some devices to avoid the PMA, which we'll see after that. Also, which is really important is that Q submission is highly recommended. What is Q submission? Q submission is a pre-sub prior to the submission. You can ask questions to FDA to have their formal feedback prior to the submission. And this is really important because this is binding. And now, since October 2023, the format for the Census 510K process is to do in electronic and e-star format. In comparison, we can say that many class 2 devices are in Europe class 2A and 2 or 2B, but it's not mandatory. They can be very different. And in this case, there is a certification by the notified body, and which will evaluate the full QMS, and it will assess the technical file. Equivalence is very different compared to US format because there is not like a predicate device. It's often you will need to have clinical trials also needed because there is you need to have many information, and the equivalency needs to be very accurate, and there is less option than for FDA. And the clinical evaluation is required with or without clinical trials. The main difference between class 2A and 2B is that the analysis will be more strict with the risk increasing. And also what is to know is that notified body will assess a category of devices when there is several medical devices in the same category, and when there is a class 2B, it will be a generic group or every if this is an implant. You can also have prior information in France, for example, asking for the GIO, Guichet d'Innovation et d'Orientation, that may be questions before submission for an advice. But this is only a recommendation, and it is not exactly the same way than a Q submission. So, and for class 3, there are less devices, but they are for high and critical risk. And for FDA approach, you need almost all required a pre-market approval. There is few exceptions due to, for example, pre-amendment devices, which are very previous devices, or novel devices with lower risk eligible for the de novo. What it means is that if there is no predicate, then you need to have the PMA. But thanks to the de novo classification process for lower risk devices, you can avoid the pre-market, which is a very, very long pathway in US. And also for humanitarian device, there is an exemption and there is specific rules for that. And typically for PMA, you will need human clinical trials, which is IDE, and data in addition to the testing data. Pre-submission is also possible. And for the FDA, for the European system, the pathway is the same that for class 2A and 2B with certification process, but the strictest evaluation and each medical device will be assessed and clinical investigations data will be required. Equivalence is very, very difficult to obtain, except if you compare a previous version of your device compared to a new version of your device. So I will now pass on cost, which is important to know about the difference. So if we, yes, everything is in white. Okay, so for US cost, you have two types of cost. First, you have the fee for the certification, 510K de novo of PMA, pre-market approval. And you can see that there is a big difference if you have a standard company or a small business company. And to be a small business company, you need to have gross receipts or sales less than $100 million, and you need to apply annually for this to be considered as a small business. So you can have the price there. You can see that it's 5,000 euro for the 510K, which is not so big for small businesses. PMA, it's very expensive compared to. After that, you have an annual establishment registration fee, and you can see that each year the cost is increasing, and now for 2025 it will be something like $9,000. In comparison, for CE mark, you have some estimation because it depends about the notified body you choose, and the complexity of the device also, and also about the number of employees in the company. And you have also the CE renewal, which is done every 5 years. And at the same time, HASO certification is for 3 years, and the follow-up is needed each year. So I will now pass the way to Emmeline for the quality. Yes.
Okay, so now a word about quality management systems. So as you may know, the FDA's current quality system regulation defined under 21 CFR Part 820 is now transitioning to harmonize with ISO 13485 requirements, making compliance easier for manufacturers already certified to this standard. In this new version, QMSR emphasizes the integration of risk management principles into all quality processes, aligning with ISO 14971 for risk management. For manufacturers, compliance with ISO 13485 documentation requirements will feel familiar with fewer adjustments needed. Despite this alignment, Some FDA-specific processes, such as corrective and preventive actions, complaint handling, and reporting requirements, will remain mandatory to meet FDA oversight needs. The transition to QMSR will officially take effect at the beginning of 2026, giving manufacturers time to align their quality systems with the new regulation. Now let's discuss the difference between FDA inspections and ISO certification audits for assessing QMS conformity. FDA inspections are mandatory and conducted without prior notice. They are regulatory and enforced by the government. They can lead to different outcomes. So first, the base case is no action indicated or NAI when compliance is confirmed and no further action is needed. Form 483, which is used to identify potential issues needing corrective actions. Warning letters that signal serious non-compliance and require urgent remediation. And if severe violations are identified, enforcement actions may include recalls, injunction, fines, or product seizures. On the other hand, ISO certification implies scheduled audits. They are conducted by accredited certification bodies and/or notified bodies. These audits are part of a typical 3-year structure cycle. Depending on the finding of the audit, different outcomes are possible. On the best scenario, of course, the certification is granted when the manufacturer has demonstrated its compliance. There can be minor non-conformities that require corrective actions to be addressed within a specified time frame, but do not affect certification status. There can be major non-conformities that can lead to suspension of certification until resolved. While ISO certification is technically voluntary, it is often essential for accessing Europe market, but not mandatory. Now, let's discuss about the medical device single audit program, which can be very useful for manufacturers aiming for compliance across the multiple jurisdictions. The MDSAP allows manufacturers to undergo one single audit to satisfy the regulatory requirements of participating countries like USA, Japan, Canada, Brazil, and Australia. MDSAP audits assess the manufacturer's quality management system based on the requirements of ISO and incorporate jurisdiction-specific regulatory requirements from participating countries. Important thing, it is mandatory for marketing medical devices in Canada. MDSAP allows a streamlined auditing. It means that instead of undergoing separate audits for each market, a single MDSAP audit reduces duplication and saves time. It ensures compliance with both ISO and country-specific requirements. The FDA accepts MDSAP audits as an alternative to inspections, with exception for causes inspection that are triggered by specific concerns and pre-approval inspection for new devices seeking US market entry. So MDSAP can be useful for manufacturers who have the objective to export their medical devices to multiple markets, as it reduces the overall regulatory burden.
Okay. So, and thank you. And so, for the conclusion, in order to have a strategy for FDA versus CE mark, what is important to know is that, as you have seen, there is rule harmonization. So, the best thing is to anticipate regulatory pathway and to combine both as much as possible. And you have seen that now QMSR and ISO 13485 is harmonized. So this is a good thing and good opportunity for European for that. And MDSAP is also to be considered at a time. And also to know the regulatory lead time. So it's sure that particularly if you have a predicate device and if you ask for a 510K, regulatory approval will be probably sooner and is more predictable when you go to FDA for this low and moderate risk medical devices compared to Europe. And Q submission, which is a pre-sub, is also a very good opportunity to obtain formal advice before submission for both regions, because you can have answers which will be helpful for CE also, because this is very difficult now to have contact and to communicate with notified body prior to submission and to get their feedback. But there is to know that the market access, there is an entry barrier in US for foreign companies, and this needs to be taken into account early in the process, because it should be seen jointly, not independently, with regulatory planning. Also, for both regions, class 3 medical devices stay very time-consuming and resource-intensive. We have to know also that there is a kind of a certainty to consider at the time, both in US with a new government, and we are looking about cutting federal funding, so may affect probably delays. At the same time, digital health is very opportunistic there, and so it could be a good way for examples. And for CE, there is the end of this year, there is a resolution from the EU Parliament on the urgent need to revise the MDR. And now there is a consultation of medtechs is currently ongoing. So we'll see what happens in this context. And just before giving the talk to Michel Berg, I will just mention the required entities for US when you go there. And I think that after Michel will be able to talk more about all this agent and so on. So you will need a US FDA agent if you have a non-US medtech, which will be the liaison for foreign companies to facilitate communication with FDA. And you will need also an official correspondent, which is required for all medtechs and which is responsible of administrative tasks related to registration and device listing. Initially important, it is also mandatory for foreign manufacturers located in it need to be located in US. And local distributor is not mandatory, but highly recommended if you want to go for distribution there. So this role may be the same or not, and we will end our presentation for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. You can let your mic on. I think you can hear me very well enough. So we can pass to few questions. We have some on the chat. Only a part, so I don't have the hand on the one who as for long questions, very precise. I think the best to answer is more to contact maybe Mednick after the discussions, because maybe they need more context and more elements to answer you more precisely. So yeah, Gaël, you can put the first question. So the first question came, is it possible to declare more than one device as substantial equivalence in order to combine technology used by that devices?
Okay, so it's possible to use several predicates for one product, but you can take one part of a product that you're interested in and another part that you're interested in, and there are rules that are described on different FDA guidance, but it has to be consistent with the intended use of your product. So you can't take something from just one medical device, which is very different from another, just to combine it to make yours for the constitution of your file. But you will find more information on the FDA website. It's very well explained. It's about split predicates.
Thank you, Emeline. Yeah, next question. So regarding the predicate device, are there official sites to find them according to our needs, or should we do our own research to find them?
So, I'm not sure. Official, yes, you can find them on the FDA databases. I think it's the PMA database. You can search for product code. So the first thing is to define your product code and to search through all the products that are already marketed in the US and find which one is the closest to yours. So I think the easiest is from the product code and compare the intended uses.
Okay, and last question for these sessions. Are in vitro diagnostic medical devices concerned by the same certification process? To speak about medical devices, but
in US or in
yeah, probably in US.
US?
It's the same regulation.
Yeah, same organization, but there is an office for medical device, in vitro medical device. It's the same than device of office for device. The process is not exactly the same. We are not in this. Do you know about this?
But,
it's quite similar. It's quite
the
similar.
same classification.
Yeah.
It's the same regulation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for you. So maybe we're gonna have some other questions after Michel speaking. So right now it's time for Michel to present his feedback on the clearance FDA and commercialization through a distributor. So Michel.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and thank you to the organizer to allow me to share our practical experience at Axilum Robotics about the US. Just a few words about what you are doing. Axilum Robotics is a medical device company founded in 2011. It has a spin-off of iCube Research Laboratory in Strasbourg, specifically the robotic team. And we are developing and commercializing robotic solutions to assist healthcare professionals for transcranial magnetic stimulation. So this is a non-invasive neurostimulation technique consisting in positioning a stimulation coil, which is the little black device that is attached on the arm of our robots. And this coil is connected to a stimulator that delivered a pulsed magnetic field. And the idea is to activate or deactivate network in the cortex, in the brain cortex. So we launched first in 2013 the first robot that was a custom robot, and in 2019 we launched the second products based on collaborative robotic technology. So that means a robotic arm mounted on a cart, and we received the FDA, the CE mark for the first robot in 2013, and the ISO for the medical device in the same year. And for the second robot, which we call TMS Cobot, we have the CE mark and the FDA clearance since 2019, and we have robots in a bit more than 90 sites and in more than 20 countries, and approximately 20% has been sold in the US. So this is just that you understand what is our device. So it's more or less we could say it's an accessory of the procedure of transcranial magnetic stimulation, because it improves the accuracy of the positioning of this TMS coil that is usually positioned manually or attached on a passive arm, which is less well implemented, that with a robot bringing precision, allowing head motion compensation. So the next slide. So what we knew since the beginning is that we need to address immediately the international market, and this is due to the highly specialized market using this kind of implemented transcranial magnetic stimulation. And US is an important piece of this market, international market. And also we knew since the beginning that we needed to take advantage of what we call our integration partner. That means all the manufacturers developing products compatible, either stimulators or neuronavigation system compatible with our device. And they already had international distributor network worldwide. And we knew since the beginning it was a great opportunity to use this existing network of distributor worldwide. So what was our FDA strategy? Of course, we, as Patricia said, the 510K was really the target, and we wanted to find a predicate device to be sure we can implement the 510K, because it's quicker, it's easier, particularly for non-class 2 devices, non-invasive and small limited risk devices. So we defined as a predicate device the non-robotic TMS system of one of our partner who already had FDA clearance for this system. And you can see here they have a system with a stimulator, with a coil I spoke to, our positioning with a robot, and attached on a passive arm. And we considered it as a predicate device, and the FDA agreed with this choice by replacing this passive arm with our robotic arm. And that answers also one of the questions we received. There is also a possibility, in addition of the predicate device, to agree on a reference device. And we wanted to support the fact that there is no new question of safety raised with a robotic arm in replacement of the passive arm. So we used as a reference device a MedTech ROSA spine, which is a robot to assist neurosurgeons for the intervention for surgery of the spine. And FDA also agreed that we used this device as a reference device in addition of the predicate device. And what my recommendation is that it's always good to discuss with the FDA in advance before you submit your 510K, because it's always better to have the discussion earlier with FDA, having the FDA feedback on your strategy, on the strategy you propose, because you have if you do not want to suspend the time for too many question and answers during the 3 months, the 90 days of the procedure of the 510K, it's always better to resolve this question in advance before you submit officially the 510K. So we received the indication for use from the FDA, and this is mentioned on our 510K summary. Axilum Robotics TMS cobot is a computer-controlled electromechanical arm indicated for spatial positioning and orientation of the treatment coil of the MagVenture TMS therapy system, which is this system without the robot. So it's pretty basic, but it was quite easy to achieve, and I think it was good enough for us in order to be able to have our cobot used for therapeutics in the US. And if you look to the CE, if you compare to the CE mark and to the intended use, you can see that it's slightly different. It mentions robotic system intended to automate and optimize the accuracy and repeatability of the positioning of a transcranial magnetic stimulation coil in the clinical situation where compatible TMS devices are intended to be used. with the exception of peripheral nerve stimulation. This is just to mention when it's not on the head. But in this case, it mentions, in addition, the advantage of having a better accuracy and repeatability versus a non-robotic position. And this is something, of course, that is interesting to claim, because if it's mentioned in the CE mark, you can claim it. We didn't have that in the US indication for use, but again, I think what was important is to achieve for us as quickly as possible the FDA clearance. So regarding the procedure, just to let you know how much time it took, how much it cost, and so on. We had the first meeting with a consultant in January 2017. We decided since the beginning to work with a consultant because we needed some support. And the consultant was recommended to us by one of our future customer in the US. They knew very well the therapeutic area. They knew very well also the team in charge of these neurology questions at the FDA. So we contacted them in January 2017. We had a pre-submission filing. This is in January 2018. So this is what I said. We wanted to have the feedback on our strategy in order to save question after the submission from the FDA, and I think that was a good idea to do so. In September 2018, we submitted the 510K, and in February 2019, we received the 510K approval. So regarding the total costs, there were approximately 150. It was in fact in dollars, $150,000. FDA fees is of course not a lot, as Patricia mentioned also earlier. It's around, at the moment in 2024, it's around $6,000 for small businesses. If you can see, if your company is having sales under 100 million, you pay reduced fees, and this is for 90 days, plus or minus question and answer. Of course, they suspend the time until you answer the question they ask, and then but in total it makes 90 days without the question and answers, and it's pretty transparent and predictable, both on timing and on cost. We spend most of the money on consultancy, around $120,000. We had to make a usability study. This is considered as very important by FDA. They want to be sure that the users will be able to use your device in accordance with your recommendation. So we had to spend $30,000 US to have a study, to hold a study in the US with 15 US participants. So this was key, and it was mandatory to have this study, the results of this study in our 510K dossier. And of course, we needed to use the technical testing according to the 60601 standard. It's the same as it's the same test we do also for the CE mark. So these testing are not included, but it was around 30,000 euros, and we did it for the CE marking, and we used the same data for the 510K. You need also to count, as was also said previously, to pay annual company registration. It's around $9,000. You need a local agent. It's not expensive. We will have one for $350, so it's not that expensive. And you have also to take in consideration that you will have FDA local inspections. They will inform you a few weeks before they come, and each 2 to 3 years you will have FDA inspections. So that was for the first part regarding the regulatory. Regarding the commercial strategy in the US, and that's my last slide. US is a big market for TMS. It's a place where it's well used, it's reimbursed. So the question was, should we go there with a dedicated sales team, or should we go there with a local distributor? In fact, it was not a very long question, because without any significant fundraising, we had to go with a local distributor. It was no question to build a dedicated team. Of course, the advantage of a team, a local team, is that the advantage is further performance, but the disadvantage of having a dedicated team is a cost, because it's probably at least $1 million per year to have a small team in the US promoting your brand. The advantage of the distributor, there is no fixed cost. They often already know your prospects. They already have customers. They can promote your products on these customers. And the disadvantage is your product is in competition with other products, and particularly with their own brands. This is a bit the case with the distributor we have, because there is selling their own stimulator. So of course the cobot work with their device, but they probably tend to give the priority to their own brand and less than to your own to your distributed product. So, but we had to make the choice of the US distributor. They was motivated enough to buy a demo unit to use it to make demo at conventions. You have also to provide them with an attractive distributor margin to make it to compensate a bit the disadvantage of having this internal competition with their own brand. And at the moment we have sold 17 units there, mostly in university hospital. I think that start, and we now are looking for expanding in the private market. But in the private market, you need to know that return of investment is a key, and of course you need to show and to convince your customer that they will earn more money with your device in addition than without, and this is something you need to have to keep in mind. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer to questions.
Thank you very much, Michel. So was very clear. So we don't have questions in the chat for the moment. So I will ask you one, and in the audience, if you have some questions, do not hesitate to ask Michel about it. So Michel, maybe it's quite general, but with your experience, do you think it's easier to go in US for a French company, or maybe to start by France like you did, or by Europe like you did? What is your feeling about that?
Well, I think it's probably sometimes easier to go in the US with a 510K, especially now with a MDR, which is much more complex and much more costly for non-significant risk devices. But I think what should guide your strategy is a possibility to have a return of investment. So you need to consider where you have the most potential traction. And for us, it was obvious that we needed to go both in the US and in Europe because of the highly specialized device and procedure we are addressing. But if it would make sense, I think, to go directly in the US if the commercialization phase can be easily implemented, because often it's when you achieve to get your 510K approval, the big question after is how do you commercialize your product, and what is the entry ticket? So if you have no distributor and you have to build your own team, it costs a lot of money. So you need to put in balance the advantage of going pretty easy on the US market, but also the entry ticket if you want to promote your product there, and the potential traction in this market.
Okay. Thank you for this, Michel. Also, another questions. So you've said that you had FDA 510K in 2019, I think. So since then, did you have some inspections from them in your manufacturing, in your company?
Yes, we had an inspection 1 month ago. It's pretty new. It was a bit late because due to the COVID period, but now I think we will probably have each 2 to 3 years a new inspection. So I think they spend 4 days, a total of 4 days. They looked a lot on the quality system. That was really the key of their inspection. And they visited our manufacturing partner, because we have a subcontractor in close to Strasbourg, and they visited also the manufacturing partner. And what I had to mention also is the manufacturing partner has also to be registered at FDA. So that means you have to pay your $9,000 per year for the registration, but the manufacturing partner has to pay the same amount, and will also be visited during the inspection. But
Okay.
it went well. I think if you are quality, if you have the right people and you are respecting the quality system, the US quality system, it should go through without any issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Michel. It's now time for Sami to present. So he will give some tips and good advice for commercialization in US. And we are sorry because he just prepared his presentation by today. So Sami, the floor is yours. And Michel, please turn off your mic.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Manuel, for the invite. Very happy to be here today. Good morning to my friends in America. Good afternoon to people in France. So my name is Sami Merad. I'm the CEO and co-founder of MedRock Ventures. We are a medtech sales accelerator based in New York City. We have a team in Boston, Miami, and in Texas. And really our goal is to accelerate the commercialization from product market fit for commercialization ready startup stage until the deal closing. So we take care of all the aspects and the steps between the lead generation, negotiation, network development until the closing and the post closing phase for our startups. And I would say, just to cycle back to what Michel you just mentioned about distribution, I would say it's a kind of a mix between having your own team in the US and working with a distributor. When you mentioned that one of the disadvantages of distribution is you're competing with other brands, you also kind of lose the control of your commercial strategy and your commercial operations, right? And also you give a huge margin sometimes. So maybe you did a great job negotiating, Michel, with your distributor, but also the commission can be huge for distribution. If you don't mind, I don't have slides, so if it's okay for you, I just go with some tips and mostly insights from what we see when we have French companies, French startups, medtech startups coming from Europe and trying to launch for the first time in the United States. And I'm happy to take questions after that. Obviously, you already know that the US is a bigger opportunity in terms of business. It's the biggest medtech market in the world, 45% of the market, 200 billion revenue versus 28, I think, in France. So it's a huge business opportunity, right? But also bigger opportunities come always with bigger risks. There is 6,500 medtech companies in the US versus around 1,500 in France. So the competition is very hard. The business standards as well. And most of the time we think that doing business in America is only about money and numbers. And this is not completely true. And most of the time, medical entrepreneurs, they come from France with this idea. And I have to say that it's more complex than that. So one of the very first thing we see when we start commercializing a French or a European medtech startup in the US is first of all about being able to demonstrate the solidity of the science. Publications, papers, abstracts, numbers, data, everything is about data. It's a complex market, it's a complex type of sales, and you really have to be ready to demonstrate your scientific data as soon as possible. And there's something very European, I would say, is the confidentiality aspect. We're not always comfortable with sharing all the data or all the science, but you need to be ready to share something and something interesting enough to move forward to the next step. Because the conversation can move very fast if you are ready to move at the same pace with your prospect, hospitals, KOLs, pharma companies, big pharma, etc. So I would say be ready to really have your science. There's no separation in the US. There is no big separation between the science and the business. Most of the people you will meet on the science aspect, on the science side, will talk with you about business, numbers, money, negotiation, etc. So that's the very first advice or very first tips I can give. And I have so many examples in mind. And this is something that comes very often. Then right after the science, you need to be good. So you have the right product, you are confident with your technology, and you prepared your scientific background and all your science and your data. You need to be good at showing this and showing that you are the best people and you are the best team to provide the value that you bring on the market. And this is very important to step up your marketing standards, your marketing materials, your budget. It's completely different from what you have to spend in France. So if you want to attack this big market, if you want to tackle the US market, you have to be ready to spend more money in order to generate more money in this bigger market. And the marketing is very important and very different, and it's way more close to sales than what you guys can have in France. And I'm saying that I used to do sales in medtech in France as well and in Europe, and I can tell you it's very different. You probably already know that in the US you have to be very direct. We have, as French, we have one problem maybe is we spend too much time about the science and the very technical aspect of the product. And this is not what matters in the US to do sales and to commercialize. It's first the science. You prove that the science is solid enough, and then you go to the value, what you're bringing to the table, what you're bringing to the organization you're trying to sell your product to. So you have to be very concise, very direct, be ready to speak about price very early in the conversation. You have to give concrete examples. So the American mindset doing business and doing sales and buying new solution is very concrete, very rational. where we spend more time on the conceptual aspect and the maybe more the emotional aspect of the sales. And you have to make your customer talking more than you. You need to work as a investigator to really understand the pain points and to make sure that your product is solving a real pain point. So no long stories, no subtle kind of pitch, not being vague, and also being ready to adapt to your audience faster than what we can have in France. In France, you can spend like 2 hours in a meeting to present your solution. In America, maybe you have 15 minutes. You have to be quick to convince people to go with you. So the second is really step up your marketing standards. There's a huge gap in terms of communication and marketing, and this applies also in the medtech area. It's not just for customer market or B2C, etc. B2B is also about marketing. I mentioned just before pricing conversation very early. So many times I am in a sales meeting with a prospect from, let's say, Cleveland Clinic. And from the very first meeting, I'm asked about the pricing of the solution and the business model and what is the exact terms and condition. And people try to starting negotiating sometime at the very first meeting. I'm not saying they close the deal at the first meeting, but they will ask question about the price and the business model very, very early, way earlier than you will have in France and in Europe. And so next insights that I see so often is spend the right time and the appropriate amount of effort defining the right pricing for the US. And most of the time is at least 3 times more expensive than, or I would say, yeah, more expensive than what price you have in France. So really be serious about having the right pricing in the US. I have this company, they were talking to a prospect and they gave the price, but they because they, it was kind of new, they didn't really spend the time to adapt the pricing for the US market. And the prospect asked if the price was per year or per month, because it was a huge gap. And companies, they spend like million in terms of medical and healthcare expenses. So you need to be aware of where your competition is priced and not to be too far from that. So spending time on pricing is very important, especially because just before I just mentioned that you will have questions about pricing very early in the conversation. I don't want to spend too much time on that. And then when you have your science being solid enough, robustness of the science, the marketing being up to standards, your pricing being clearly defined, and you being able to handle conversation about pricing very early, then you need to be ready to compete hard. As I mentioned before, there's like more than 6,000 medtech companies, and this is local companies plus all the foreigners trying to break in the US, right? From all over the world, from Korea, Europe, Asia in general, Latin America as well. So a lot of competition. So you can have the right science, but you have to build the right network as soon as possible, and also to work on your references in the US as soon as possible. You can work with the best hospitals in France or in Europe, but America is very, focused on America most of the time. So they probably don't know what is APHP most of the time. They don't know APHP, they don't know Oncopole, the Toulouse, etc., except the very niche KOL because they have collaboration together. But otherwise, it's not as main as Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic or MGH, etc. So you really have to work on your references in the US. And for this, it's what we call pay to play. So you can pay for a pilot. And I know that, Michel, you mentioned some pricing for 15 patients, so 2,000 to 5,000 per patient for a study. So this is the pricing that we see also for like a pilot study. You have some collaboration studies that you can also do, and this is a good path to start talking about a commercialization. So you have your product or your solution, you can try to explore a new use case with a famous or a top tier hospital, and then you develop new use cases, and then you can negotiate favorable terms of commercialization with this hospital. Maybe you will have a discount, or you will have like a free duration of trial for your device, etc., etc. And Even the scientific team will negotiate about the business, which is very different in France, where you negotiate the business usually with more the département des achats or something like that, right? You have also incubation programs with some hospitals, like Mount Sinai, they have one. You have one also in UCSD. The MD Anderson, they also have like a incubation program. This can be a good solution to start having your first references. This can also be a bit costly, and most of the time they ask for equity. So they can be a bit unrealistic when you already have your revenue in Europe, you have like your team, you raise money, then you get asked for like 1% or 2%. Maybe it's not really adapted for your phase or for your stage. And also about IP, we see a lot of confusion in the IP. If there is like a co-development or a collaboration about the improving the use cases or improving your solution, you have to be very careful about the IP. So we also recommend to very early in your development stage in the US, hire the right legal team, and also take that in your budget. It's something very new for French or European startup companies. When they come to the US, they don't really think about the budget they have to allocate for legal fees, and I'm happy to reply to questions about that as well. Then you have to incorporate at the right timing. It's not necessary to incorporate when you start having conversations with your prospect. You can wait until you have like actual negotiation for doing your first sales or hiring your first team internally. It's very easy and very fast, and it's very quick to incorporate in the US. So this is something that you can think about in advance. It's better to be a US incorporated company to make the business easier and to make the sales easier, but you can act as a foreign company for the first month of commercialization until you have your first deals. And about incorporation, it's fast and quick, but also starting the operations, like setting up the first hire and the accounting services, etc. All this is much faster than what we can have in France, actually. Then when you have your incorporation, you have to pick the right country manager and the right sales team. So pick people that they have already like an initial network in the field. I know, Michel, you mentioned that about the distributor. I think you're right. You have to work with the people. They spend like, years building networks and building relationships. You have to use that. You cannot come from nowhere and start from zero. I mean, you can, but this is not the most efficient way to do it. Pick people in the right or the relevant localization. Sometimes you can have like salespeople, they're like in the middle of the country, so it means they don't go to conferences, they don't do networking events. So pick the people really connected to the right hubs: Boston area, New York, Texas, Florida, California. These are the main hub to accelerate your business commercialization in the US. And you have to have American mindset people to lead the sales for you in the US. At Medrock, for instance, I'm the only one French, as you can tell with my accent. Everyone else is American, and all our sales are American, and I mean, not necessarily American background, but from America at least. And you have to pick the one-man show type of business leaders. This is like the stereotype, but it's actually true. So be careful with your first team. It's very important. You're going to spend a lot of money to build your first team. The average salary for a good medtech sales is starting at 120 fixed salary, without bonuses, without stock options. So if you want to have a type of team, you need to plan the budget accordingly. And also, you probably want to consider working with top KOL as advisors. This is also another thing that I want to advise about that. It's very different from the mindset we have in France doing sales development. Here in America, especially here in New York, you can have a top KOL from Mount Sinai, but he's also an independent contractor and consultant, and he's also working with different startups. He probably might be a multiple or serial founder of a startup, also business angels. Having like multiple hats here, it's very normal, especially for top people. 2 weeks ago, I was visiting some investor in Florida, and I met with this medical director from a very big oncology center in the Miami area. This guy spent 20 years in Cleveland Clinic. He's very skilled, very famous, top KOL. And in the first 10 minutes, he gave me his, rates, his consulting rates, hourly consulting rates, and how we can work together independently from the hospital he was working with. And this is very normal. And the idea of conflict of interest and the separation between academic, hospital, business, private business is very different from what we have. And you guys can take advantage of that if you understand how it works the right way. Pricing are very different as well. So there's no need for me to name this person, but the average of a top KOL that you will hire for specific hours per month is around 700 to 1,000 something per hour. So it's very different from what we have in what we can see in France, right? So this is about the team and some numbers. Then when you have this, I highly recommend to be close to your customers, yourself or the team you will hire, or the people or the partners or the accelerators or the people you will work with. Make sure that you are close to your customers. If your customers are in the northeast, probably because it's the biggest concentration of hospitals and big pharma and biotech, you need to have people that are able to go every week to the local networking events. They can take a lunch with your prospect and your customer. They really can feel the field and be on the ground. This is something very important. Most of the time we say Americans are mostly about the money. It's not completely true. Doing business in America is also about building relationships. So knowing about, their personal private life and meeting your customer on a regular on a frequent basis and building meaningful relationship. This really help to do your first sales, right? Being able to go to conferences, to specialized networking events, as I mentioned, and also being able to easily travel the States, right? Like traveling for meeting customers is something very common, even if there is like multiple hours from a city to another city. And I will stop on that is very early on, build your sales toolkit for the US. Don't wait until you have the first prospect to start thinking, oh, what material I will have, what documentation I can put in place. So the rhythm can be very fast. In France, I remember contacting a KOL or a head of department can take like weeks, right? In America, like here in New York, if I send an email to the head of department of a big hospital, if he's interested, he's gonna reply to me the same day. So you have to be ready to go very fast. So if you have an opportunity, you have to be sure you have all your press release ready, you have your scientific data, your slide decks, your video, and people will reply to you very quick, and you will be surprised of that. And then you can miss your chance if you think it's going to take the same time as it take in Europe. And then to finish, you have different options you can consider. Michel, you highlighted the distribution. You can also work with local incubators, hospital incubators. You can work with what we call independent contractors, freelancer, basically. They can work on commission, but they will ask for a fix, for a retainer, what we call a retainer. You can consider working with some economic agencies. I know that Texas now is putting a lot of effort to attract foreign companies or to attract medtech companies from other states. Florida is putting a lot of money and effort as well, so you should probably have a look at that. European ecosystem also, BioValley France, you have initiative to help companies to go abroad, and BPI France as well. And you have sales accelerators, and you can also consider having your own sales team. So you have many options, and it's good to put your number together because the budget will be very different. So this is the few tips. I think I put together 10 main tips that we saw in the last 6 months working with French companies. I'm happy to take any question about that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Sami. So for the moment, we do not have any questions. But that's very interesting. Your different points. I have a question for you. It's more an advice for a small company. Do you advise them to consider first consolidating their French business or European business before moving to US, or in parallel if possible, because as you said, it's a question of budget, but in the sales team, but also in the regulatory team. So or maybe to focus first in US, even if they are all the technologies in France, the IP is in France. So what is your advice?
Well, that's a good question and very broad as well. I don't want to reply it depends, but obviously it depends. It depends of the product. If the product make a lot of sense in the US, I would say the US is the biggest market, so they will have to go as soon as possible. Then you have also the regulatory aspect. Sometimes the regulatory aspect can be faster in Europe, or for some reason you can have like already put together some initiative in Europe. So you need to be ready to spend that time, that regulatory time related, and it has been very well detailed by Patricia and Michel as well before. So it depends of the product you have, but the US is still the biggest market. So in my opinion, as soon as you can go to the US, you have to do it, but you have to do it the right way, because it can be very costly. Mm-hmm. And about the IP, you're right. It's a very important question. You have to secure the IP as soon as possible for the US, because it can be very aggressive, very, very aggressive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sami. We don't have any questions. I think it's 6:20, so a bit late. So thank you very much, Sami, Emeline, Patricia, and Michel, for being with us today and presenting your very nice topics and know-how on this. So do not forget to register for the next webinars of Enosis, the one dedicated to US. And if you have any more questions, here you have my contact, or you can contact anybody at Enosis. So thank you very much being with us today, and have a nice end of day for you, Sami, and a nice end of year, Christmas period, and holidays. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Happy holidays. Bye.
Bye, Sami.
Bye-bye.